Good afternoon. Good afternoon. My name is Taiwo Majekodome, and thank you for showing up here today for my next podcast, episode 3. Still on I Achieving Women. Thank you for joining us again, Dr. Say. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm so glad to be here with you as we continue this conversation today.
Yes. How you making through the snow?
I made
No
it
snow.
out okay. It's pretty cold here where I'm at. And so there's no complaints. I love the shift in the seasons. Good to see a different scenery every now and then.
Yes, yes. Thank God for safe trip. Thank God. So, thank you for joining us today again. We're still going to continue on conversation on I Achieving Women, but we're going to take a different route today, looking at the other things that can be going on with I Achieving Women. Um, so, today's going to be the third episode, but we're going to shift to emotional wellness
That's good.
for high achieving women. So today we're going to be analyzing wellness for modern women among the high achieving women. And thank you for joining us today. And a little brief about a recap from the first and the second episode. We spoke about self care for high achieving women. In this episode, we're going to look at their emotional wellness. How are they coping with the emotional wellness? What does emotional wellness means for high achieving women? Do they even have emotions at all? So today we're looking at the overview. Um, it can be looked as if invisible issues such as mentally overload women um, that carry um, that carry a lot of things on their shoulder, such as people that giving care to others. They put others in front of them. They put everything they do in front of them without remembering they have to take care of themselves as well. Do they have emotions? High expectations, social norms, family or relationship, they carry all that on their shoulder, forgetting that they have to take their care of their own emotional wellness. A lot of times we see the role of culture, how the role of culture plays into expressing emotions. For certain culture, it could mean they weak. For some, is you whine about things, but really they try to express themselves. And because of such stigmas, a lot of achieved women rather keep such emotion to themselves. Um, but so in 2000 in 2026, back in 24, 25, 23, we see how things played out. And looking at what is going on now, Dr. Say, before we move on, can we hear a little bit from your end, your practice, how you intend or what your practice does for such women that we described?
Absolutely. And I appreciate you giving a breakdown on looking at emotional wellness from a cultural standpoint or, just how we see it in our own society. When we talk about what the work we do at Just Pivot Wellness, our main goal is to help individuals understand their emotions and to deal with them in positive ways. And so we recognize that people's lived experiences create memories within their brains. And sometimes those memories, it can create some cycles that may not be productive and healthy for individuals, and it can really shift the mood and it shifts how they may see their situation. And it's rightfully so. Many individuals may deal with stress, and so stress can cause them to feel a certain type of way. And so as a result, we work and help people to develop coping skills to navigate the stressors of their life and to help them with improving their overall functionality. And so this can be a result of giving them a positive outlook on their circumstances. It may be a result of reframing a negative belief about how they're seeing their circumstances. And then ultimately, we want them to proceed in their values, but not to judge their emotions or feelings as they come, because who's to say that stress, it can make us sad, and so we shouldn't question our sadness. It is what it is. It's real. So it's making room for it, feeling it to however intensity the person needs to, and then move it along. It's like riding a wave, moving it along, so that ultimately the individual can kind of get to the next thing that they need in their life.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Beautiful, beautiful. Um, from what you just said, it appears as if your practice capture exactly what such women might need to manage to identify um, themselves and still practice high emotion high achieving women they want to achieve. I mean, to go on their daily business. However, so so what tips can we give such women? Like how can they plan to manage emotional awareness other than identify their triggers, um, identify that about their emotions, what trigger their emotions. So how can what tips can you give such women um, that going through those things but don't know how to say, oh, maybe I need to get a break. I need to get, you know, seek some advice, or can they identify themselves? What tips can you give them today?
Right. And so we start off with understanding, the emotions that we have could possibly be serving as a survival tool. And so it triggers in sensation where we feel something within our bodies, and it helps us to navigate and react to our bodies through that communication network, right? And so some of the things that we do to help, individuals is identifying the emotion with the feeling. And so we recognize that, anger typically protects. And, when we're feeling a trigger, it's trying to send a sense of something that may have happened in the past or something that needs to be addressed in the present. And so one is, being able to name the emotion. So if
Mhm.
it's anger, it's, is it protecting us from, danger? Is it protecting us from being vulnerable? Is it protecting us from, whatever the situation may be? And then it kind of goes out to maybe some secondary emotions of how it may show up. And so initially, a person may not see their anger as anger. They initially may see it as annoyance. They may initially see their anger as something as hurt. They may see it as a responsiveness to being distant or feeling threatened or being mad. And so once we're able to isolate and identify what, that is happening there, then we can kind of piece together, well, what about a situation is causing us to feel hurt? Or what about a situation is causing us to feel mad? And what about a situation is calling us to be protective in this way? And so again, we address that, and then we give, adaptive, emotions that we hopefully want to feel as a result of going through this this response, right? And so the hope is that we don't just stay in our anger or our grievances, but we kind of turn it for something that's more productive to us, so that we can show up in it in a more adaptive way. And so that's why that work of, just the recognition, the naming it, to sitting with it, it's how do we make a choice now to proceed? And again, our values, how do we make a choice to proceed in something that is reflective of who we hope to become?
Thank you, thank you, thank you. Beautiful illustrations. Um, but before the end of the podcast, I would like to touch up on a little few things that you just mentioned. As you know, for women, there's could be various factors that can factor into how um, women manage their emotions or what caused them to go to that stage, such as hormone fluctuations and the social norms or mental overload. Specifically, the hormones fluctuations during your practice among the patients you have seen so far that you have helped in the past. Did you see how hormone can impact how their emotional state?
Absolutely. I believe hormones can definitely play a role in how someone experiences their emotions. And, what I would say is we're not in the business of having people suppress their emotions, but we want people to feel what's going on and to gain an awareness of how my hormones are triggering me to feel this way. And so some of the hormones that we can talk about is maybe, dopamine. Dopamine drives our motivation, it drives our pleasure and our focus. And it is released when we're completing a task or experience. And so ultimately, when someone has experienced this reward chemical, they're going to experience some form of joy. When we think of the hormone of serotonin, it's used as to stabilize our mood. And so, we want to increase it because we want it to help us to manage our anxiety, to boost our mood, to promote that well-being and that happy feeling, right? When we look at the hormone of oxytocin, this is that hormone that really helps us to understand trust and bonding and feeling secure. And so when we're low on feeling, oxytocin within our body, then sometimes we may lean into dopamine as not as a replacement, but to increase it, to give us the pleasure, right? To give us
Mhm.
connection. When we think of, pain, when we think of discomfort, it's often, resemblance of that endorphins that are being released. And so what helps to replenish it is maybe through movement, maybe through exercise, maybe through laughter, maybe through increasing healthy pleasures. There can be maladaptive pleasures, but we want to ultimately get people to being balanced in how they consume things that brings them joy. And then of course you can talk about the estrogen, the progesterone and cortisol, how those can play a role in a person's development. But ultimately, we have to be conscious and aware of how are we feeding these hormones and how are they managed within our bodies, because they're involuntary, they're happening behind the scenes. And but sometimes the voluntary is we can, like, play a part in how they are showing up in our lives through action, through pleasure, through experience, so on and so forth.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's a powerful message. Involuntary actions of these hormones, something we cannot control. But other than such hormone that we cannot control, how they move through our body, there's other things in this life that we can't control, but we can control how we respond to them. Um, but in this episode, the next episode, we will elaborate further on the tips. So, what do we do with such involuntary actions that contribute to our the emotions? We're going to talk about the tips. We're going to talk about things that we can do to kind of relieve ourselves out of something we cannot control, or how to deal with it at that time when we have it. But again, thank you for joining me today. I hope I see you in my next episode. Thank
Thank
you.
you for having me. Yes, and
Thank
I'll see you on the other side.